he develops a relationship with Franklin Roosevelt, and sounds from the book, it appears that perhaps he sees himself as a mentor, maybe underestimates the talent of FDR. FDR becomes governor, he gets insulted, he's not brought, but here's FDR, a patrician and a New Yorker, and he goes out and he, becomes FDR. I mean, it's just, to find a book on FDR is not so hard. I mean, there's thousands of them, How do you compare? Like, what was that relationship about, and how would you compare the two?
This is one of the ugliest and saddest episodes in Al's life. Now, first of all, he looked at FDR as a child, as a pretty boy. First of all, he hadn't come up through Al really had come up through the ranks the hard way. He worked his way up. He was a remarkable American success story. FDR's mouth, as far as Al was concerned, FDR was a dilettante. A pretty boy, a good face, and he was fond of him. I think he truly, truly liked him. He didn't take him seriously because he was a pretty boy. Keep in mind, at Harvard, you know what FDR's nickname was? They said the FD stood for feather duster. He was a lightweight. Everybody thought that. People didn't realize till later, in my opinion, one of the things that changed FDR, that brought him out, was the polio. He conquered that with remarkable, you got to read the willpower, the quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, that he just said, I'm going to do this. He became the FDR with the polio, and nobody saw that. Furthermore, to Al, and this is very, very old-fashioned, but this is Al's generation, FDR was less than a full man. He didn't walk. He was crippled, to use the term back then. It's an ugly term, but he wasn't a full man. How could he hold up? Al put in incredible hours of government. How could this guy, who was a pretty boy to begin with, who was now, we would now call disabled, how could you assume he was going to be even governor? That's a joke. Well, okay. I think he was really fond of him. There's a passage of letters that I quote from where he's incredibly demeaning. FDR is objecting to something, to Bob Moses is encroaching on his territory in a really nasty way. And FDR writes an objection, and Al writes this incredibly demeaning letter as you would to a child. This is stuff you don't know about and you don't have a right to talk about. The line I quote, when I was a young man and I would, let's just say, get ahead of myself, my father would say, you still got milk on your lips. Okay. That was his way of saying, you're not quite a hot shot as you think you are. That was the feeling I got from the letter. I quote that line in the book. Well, FDR then goes on to, as you say, become FDR. So here's Al. After 1928, he's incredibly bitter. In some ways justifiable. He was rejected in the worst possible way. An honest loss is one thing. He actually, by the way, even New York State voted for Hoover against him, which just crushed him. So he was rejected in this horrible way. And instead, they turn to this little pretty boy, and he becomes the great hero of the Depression. That becomes the symbol of the fecklessness of the American